goes down in the west. Stars move through the skies. The seasons follow their course. And that is the most real thing. And that's what all the old stories are made of. And we have to be brave enough. We have to be brave enough to stand and say, when someone tells you that the story in Genesis is not a scientific story, we have to be brave and stable enough to say, you're right. It actually is before the scientific story. It actually accounts for a scientific method. The story in Genesis 1 holds in its structure the means by which we can do science. But no, you're right, it's not a scientific story. But you need it because you wouldn't be doing science without it. You wouldn't be able to do science if you weren't able to identify a category and then evaluate it and see whether or not it is good. That comes before everything, right? That's how it starts, right? God says, he creates, he names, he separates, and then he looks and he sees that it is good. And it's super interesting because this is even really interesting in terms of the process. Again, the problem of emergence and of top-down constraint. He says, let the earth bring forth plants with their seed. He says, let the earth bring forth things that have an identity. And then he looks and he says that it is good. In the first chapter of Genesis, it's quite astounding. Because God doesn't name every single species of plant that you can imagine. He doesn't have to do that. He says, let the earth bring forth plants with their seed. He says, let the earth bring forth things that have an identity that perpetuates itself. That's all he's saying. Saying, let the earth bring forth things that have an identity, that identity perpetuate itself. And then he looks and he says that it is good. And that's how it works, folks. Right? Even in terms of evolutionary process, that's how it works. You have variation and potential, and then you have names, categories, bind them, and you have a way to judge whether or not they participate well in that identity, right? That's what a scientist does. Scientist has a theory, and his theory necessarily has to look at a specific slice of phenomena, right? If you're studying hippopotami, you're not studying the moon or whatever. You have to study a certain category of phenomena, and then you have the theory, and then you say, bring forth facts within this constraint. And then you have to judge if those facts are good. What does it mean that they're good? It just means that they fit with the theory in this case. The difference between us and God is that God doesn't make a mistake. We can have a bad theory and then realize that the facts and the theory don't fit together. He says, let the earth bring forth plants with their seed. He says, let the earth bring forth things that have an identity. In Genesis 1, obviously because it's the source of all things, we don't have that same problem. We just have God giving the constraint and then judging the variability and saying that is good. And so that is the confidence that we can have. And I really think that we can We can advance with that confidence to know that the experience of the world is first. He says, let the earth bring forth plants with their seed. He says, let the earth bring forth things that have an identity. And then he looks and he says that it is good.